Welcome. This is the first. I'm not even going to cut this like strange opening. Welcome. This is the first episode of season 2 of Fractional CMOs and the 90-Day Win. I'm Dean Way. This season, we're going to talk through scenarios that companies and these CMOs experience to share lessons learned and tips on how to get the most out of the fractional CMO you hired. So let's get started. Hi, Debbie.
Hi.
Okay, Debbie. So let's start with our hypothetical. You just started like a 1-year engagement. Like, what's the first problem most of your clients need to start fixing? And also like tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thank you. So I'm Debbie Oster with Entrepreneur's Edge, and we help small businesses figure out where they're wasting their marketing spend. I saw that a lot when I worked on the agency side of things, and I'm really now enjoying working with companies and helping them see the results that they deserve to see. So to your question, the first kind of thing that I identify is whether or not they have business goals in place. Because as the marketing expert, I can't come in and reasonably set marketing goals or create a strategy for their business if I have no idea what they're trying to accomplish in their business overall. So I'd say that's probably the very first step for me.
And Joe, how about you? What's the sort of first problem your clients usually need to start fixing, and who are you?
Okay, yeah. So I'll start with the who am I. So I'm Joe Fitzpatrick. I'm a fractional CMO at Ad Scientist, and we really work with clients to understand who their high value audiences are, how to engage those audiences, and turn those audiences into customers. We really are in the business of like demystifying performance marketing, so that it becomes a common sense, dependable process for businesses, so they feel in charge of their own growth. And we work with startups, usually startups that are disrupting more traditional industries. So think estate planning, tax filing, cremation, really the industries that don't get a lot of attention from advertising and marketing. And we try to make them as engaging and resonating with audiences as possible. But from to the question, at the top of the hour is on a 1-year engagement, the things that I look for when I first go in, just to Debbie's point, like goals, like what are they trying to achieve, but tying those goals to what they're doing right now. And a lot of that is data. Within a lot of organizations, the data is the big problem, where goals have been set without understanding what they're doing right now. So it's kind of taking the blindfold off the business is one of the first things I do, trying to get in and understand and educate them about their data. After that, it's trying to combat the internal biases that have developed over the run of the business, who the audience really is, where they need to go, what they need to do to be successful, and trying to figure out what those biases are, and trying to tie those back to what's really happening within the organization. So, that's really the big wheel to turn. So,
all right, Joe. So let's stay with you for a second. All right. The typical answer to this question is, include me and make sure that I'm in the loop and be open with your information. But besides sharing information, what should a CEO do to get like absolute maximum value, squeeze the last penny from their fractional CMO, other than keeping him in the loop and, giving them the information? What else can they do to get max value?
The benefit of fractional CMO is that they are embedded within your team. So, if they're on the outside, so that's the obvious one. But I think, so bringing them in from the cold, but also giving them an insight into their thinking, not just saying like, oh, this is what we're doing, but why are they doing it? Because oftentimes that's where the marketing side of things that you're there to give a different viewpoint. And so if they can walk you through their thinking of how they got to where they are, you might be able to shed some light, or maybe give them information that was crucial to a decision they made 6 months ago, and they need to reevaluate that now. So I've had that with a client where I've sat down, I've went through what their targets are, what their goals are, and I've asked them, can you just lay out what your thought process was here to get to these targets? And within the first or second sentence, I realized that they hadn't accounted for something that was a sort of marketing thing to shed a light on. And I was able to say, but have you considered this? And then that almost stopped the entire train of thought, because everything they said after that, they started to realize where the ramification that had on the rest of their thinking. So not just the sharing and bringing in from the cold, but what is their inner thought process, and how can you be a voice in that process? So
Debbie, what do you think, other than like being kept in the loop?
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking off of what Joe was saying, they have to understand that you're being brought into the business as, an executive level role, you're a strategic partner in their business. They have to be willing to kind of let go of the reins a little bit and let you do your job, do the role that they're putting you in. And also make sure that you have the infrastructure to be able to do that well, or hire for it. So I've had some experiences where I'll go into a small business and they think I'm going to come be the like jack of all trades. And I'm like, no, we're going to need this, 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 and this if we want to do, achieve these objectives or accomplish these things. And, some of them are just like, I feel like I just grabbed the rug from underneath their feet. It's like, I can't do all of these things. And if I try to do them, I'm not going to do them very well. So I'm not going to be able to serve the purpose that you've hired me to serve.
I think that's a very common problem. Whenever people think of fractional CMO, they think fractional marketing team, and that's not really what you're paying for. You're paying for somebody to come in and guide you into how to build a marketing function within your business, not be the marketing function.
So, Debbie, I'm glad you mentioned part of that in the team, because I wanted the next question around that is, and this is a new question, we haven't asked it in the podcast before, but going along with our hypothetical 1-year engagement, okay, what would you say, or what maybe lessons that you would pass along to other fractional CMOs who are walking into a company where there's already people working in marketing, there's just not a CMO?
What advice would I give them? I think I would just.
What should they watch out for, or what should they try to do first?
I mean, really,
there's like a social media person, and there's a person who's doing X. I mean, they're like, maybe junior to mid specialists. There's no senior people there.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I think just kind of getting, learning the lay of the land, like what has been happening. How are people doing things? What are they measuring, and how are they determining whether the work that they're doing, whether or not it's working, moving the needle or not? Because I've found that a lot of small businesses, their teams, they think, well, we're email marketing and we're doing social media and we're doing all of the things. But when you look a little bit deeper at those, various activities or initiatives, they're not really moving the needle at all. And so it's just wasted time, effort, resources. So I think that would be my recommendation is like when you first get in, and if you have a team that you're going to be in charge of directing, then you've got to understand like, where are they at right now? What do they think about their work and what they're doing, and how are they measuring success? That would be my number one, I think.
So, Joe, let's talk about a variation of that, because there are fractional CMOs who are interim full-time CMOs, but it's only going to last for X number of months, let's say, till the permanent person's hired. And then there are fractional CMOs where it could go on for a year or longer, but they're only like a portion of the week, let's say, or a portion of the month. Every month they're in there. So what would you advise to anybody who's sort of walking into a situation where there's already a full-time team in place? And I know there's a variation of the question I asked Debbie because I want to add some conditions. So sorry, Debbie. So there's permanent people there, and then you're like there a day a week.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what would you sort of advise as a red flag or a green flag, or maybe do this first, or maybe avoid X to other fractional CMOs who are walking into that situation?
I think that whenever you have a very low touch point with a team, you're really going to want to go in and realize, like, whenever you're speaking to that team, you're first going to want to try to understand, like, what is their level of understanding of the business itself, and then what the business is trying to achieve, to see if there's an alignment from goals to action and tactics. But you're also going to want to I've seen this from both sides, from being on a marketing team where like a consultant has been brought in, and then also on the other side where I've been a consultant brought in. And the best thing and advice I would give to somebody who's starting out as a fractional CMO is you really have to, it's not just for you to come in and dictate what people are going to do. You need to win allies on the team. And the best way to do that is to tie what are they doing now, why are they doing it, and what do they want to achieve themselves, and trying to win those allies over. Because you can't, if you're there one day a week, you can't, have everybody do what you say for one day and then you go away, and for the rest of the 4 days they're not doing anything, right? So you need to come in and you need to sit down with them and really get to win those allies over, and then start giving them a process to follow where you're maximizing the most out of that one day in, where if it's okay, we're going to check in once a week. It's not a micromanaging thing. It's you have your own accountability. You have your own control over your destiny and and the work you do. But it's my job to give you guide rails so that you're doing the right thing for the business during the other 4 days that I'm not there. So that would be really, to boil it down, is like give them the structure to be successful, but also win them over and really empower them to be successful too.
So it's fair to say you, like a fractional CMO in that case, like the 1 day a week or 1 week a month, like that person is a leader but not a manager.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and you can't manage. If you try to manage and lead, you're going to fail. So you really want to come in and give them, like, as a leader, you have to inspire and motivate people. You can't you have to really, but in order to motivate people, you have to know what their motivations are. So that's a key one to understand with any new team.
All right. And let's turn it around, Joe, and then I'm going to go back to Debbie. So let's literally turn it around. Okay. So you're a full-time employee working on a marketing team, and the company hires a fractional CMO. Like, what changes should you expect to see in your job?
I mean, if you are a full-time employee, and
you're in charge of Facebook ads or email or whatever, right?
Yeah. And then a fractional CMO comes in. Depends on the fractional CMO, because some will come in and say, this is what we're going to do, and we're going to totally throw everything out and start from fresh. Or some can come in and say, like, where do you see the opportunities? Why do you see those opportunities? And that's the sort of thing that I would expect from a good leader and a good CMO, is to come in and ask the people who are on the ground and who are seeing the data day to day, where they see opportunities, and then try to guide them. And I would expect to have those conversations where, if I was junior, they would say, what do you see as an opportunity? I would spell that out, and they would give me feedback. That's not what the business goals are. If you're trying to achieve this one thing, how do you achieve it, and get that feedback? And then every time you have that conversation, they're getting an understanding of what the business is trying to achieve and how they fit into that bigger picture. And then you get a sense of, like, actually, this is how I am most useful to the company. So that would be what I would expect from a fractional CMO coming in, is like they show me how I am most valuable to the company, and I get the action on that, and then feel good about my role. So,
Debbie, if you're like head of social media, and it's a nice title, but you're a pretty junior marketing person, right? You're head of social media for some, small to mid-sized marketing company, and a fractional CMO has just been hired, right? Do you think that you're sort of expecting a lot of disruption, or do you think that it's sort of like, kind of like a pilot has been put in the plane, but your job handling baggage is just fine?
It's a subjective question. I feel like if the right person is put in place, I would feel like now there's someone flying the plane. There's someone to give me direction, to give me more purpose to my role, to help outline the expectations for my role. Because if a company is lacking that role in general, there probably isn't much, in my experience, leadership and coaching and professional development going on. When people just don't have the right people in the right places, it usually kind of feels like everybody's just kind of like every man for themselves, like just kind of figure this out and keep my head down and do what I got to do and get by. So that's kind of what I would expect. And I've been in roles like that, in the past in my career, where I was a manager level or email marketing manager, and they bring in a CMO or a director level person. And that's typically what you can expect. Even if they're a full-time CMO, they're going to assess the situation, outline your roles and responsibilities and how you're going to be measured, and then just make sure everybody is on the same wavelength and working towards the same goals.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so I only have one more question that I really want to ask you guys, but it's a kind of a bigger one. Like, it might require a little bit of chewing before we get to it. Okay, so we talked before about how there are sort of full-time but interim fractional CMOs, and then there are like part-time ish but continuing. So let's talk about the continuing for a second. In your own experience, okay, should those engagements, do they work better when they're a marathon or a sprint? Which is to say, do they work better when on day one you know what your last day is going to be? Or do they work better when you know that as long as performing happens, like it could go on, ad infinitum?
I would say, to give it would depend on the company, which is better. For me, like, knowing that I've got 3 months to turn the thing around, I work better on like projects where I know that, hey, this is what I have to deliver within 3 months, within 6 months, within 9 months, because that is laser focused. And then you have a certain, it stops scope creep as well, because that's what you're here to deliver, and you've got 9 months to do it. So everything that's added on to that is diminishing the ability to really drive that one thing home. I think the difference is where you have a company where they have a very set thing to do, and sometimes with startups where they have, say, we need to hit these targets to get the Series A, or we need to do forecasting to get the Series A. That's like a short sprint where there's a successful thing at the end. There's other companies that aren't trying to raise, and they have a more, okay, we have a solid team. They just don't have the strategic background. They don't have that long term, or the CEO has a hard time breaking the company goals down into marketing objectives for, say, the digital marketing manager or whoever it is. And I think that's a better fit for that long term, no real path, because you just become you're an advisor to the CEO, and then you're also the translator from the CEO to the marketing team. That's what you're there to do. But if you're there for that sprint where there's a real like high return objective to hit, I think that's where it's better to have that like 30 days, 60 days, 90 or 3 months, 6 months, 9 months objective. So,
Debbie, what do you prefer, sprints or marathons?
I prefer the marathons. I can appreciate what Joe's saying, and I could see where in specific instances the sprint makes more sense. But most of my experience has been, running the marathon, long-term engagements with clients. And I feel like I become kind of part of the team while still working part-time as a fractional. And it just really allows me to get to know the company inside and out. And yeah, I've just found the most success in that situation. Although I haven't had a lot of instances where I've just run the sprint and only been with them for a couple of months or on a project basis. So yeah, that's my thoughts. I think that, with a lot of small businesses, especially in competitive or saturated markets, sometimes it takes a while to test things and figure out, what is it, what's going to get the market's attention, what's going to really differentiate them. And it takes iterations of things, running ads specifically. I mean, I found that, you got to try something. Sometimes you just realize like that's really not what you needed to do in the opposite direction. And sometimes that just takes time. So from my perspective, I would say definitely longer term engagements work well.
Right. Yeah, that's a new question that I put in here, and I really like that question. I'm keeping that one.
Yeah, that's a good point. Just what Debbie said is, like, when you have those sort of objectives, like a CRO program or an advertising thing that needs to evolve over time, that's the great thing about having an open-ended contract, where you have that time to kind of build and iterate on it. some companies are more receptive to that than others. Some companies need it now, and then other companies are willing to engage with the process. So both have their pros and their cons, but it's really about who the management team is and what the objectives within the company are.
Well, thanks very much. This has been great. I like the new questions, and you guys did great. I didn't give you any warning on them, right? It's just like, here, go. And you guys did fantastic. Okay, so Debbie, it's on the screen, but how should people contact you, and who should contact you?
So let's start with who. Any small business owners, established or startups that are looking to take their business to the next level. They have no idea where to spend their marketing budget. They feel like they've been wasting it to date, and or just engaging in a bunch of random things, and it's not moving the needle for their business. That's who should contact me. Visit my website, entrepreneursedge.biz. I'm also really active on LinkedIn under Debbie Oster, as well as Instagram and Facebook.
And Joe, who should contact you, and what's your preferred way for them to do it?
Yeah, so I find a lot of the companies I've been working with have started off with scaling, but for some reason that scaling has stopped and stagnated. And I work best with startups or entrepreneurs who have that business, that core business, but are just struggling to find that scale. Where you can find me, LinkedIn, Joe Fitzpatrick, or at adscientist.ca, either one.
Anyone who's sort of watching these episodes in order might remember the fractional CMO that was in a few episodes back, or maybe even previous. He, when it came to how should people contact you, he did something that not one out of the first 50 guests had ever done. It caught me by surprise that he did it. He gave out a phone number.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why has no one ever thought of that? But on the other hand, most of us don't even answer numbers we don't recognize. So he gave out his phone number. And after it was over, I said, like, man, like, you really stood out on that one. Only, let's see, he's 50 guests, so only 2% of guests gave out their phone number. And so, like, right on, cool, you do it.
Has anybody like held up a poster board with all of their contact
information? Not yet, but now that you've said it, I imagine at some point in the future, someone's going to do it. They're going to hold it. By the way, Dean,
send me a postcard at P.O. Box.
Actually, they're just going to hold it up, starting with question 1, and leave it up the whole time, like everything, LinkedIn profile page and every possible phone number, mom's email address, whatever it takes. Just like contact. Nope, gave out his phone number. I thought it was fantastic. One of a kind. Probably never be repeated. All right. Thanks. Thanks, Debbie. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next time.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.